Welcome to the PIO podcast. I am your host, Robert Tornabene. I have been a PIO for over 11 years with 27 years of law enforcement background. Welcome to season 2 of the PIO podcast. I am working hard to bring you the very most diverse crowd of subject matter experts in the public sector field. You can help grow the podcast by sharing it with friends and colleagues. Please give the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you listen to. So sit back and enjoy our next episode. Good morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Mark Brady. He's from Montgomery County in Maryland. Welcome aboard, Mark.
Good morning. Good morning. It's actually my buddy Pete Parringer is over in Montgomery County. I'm retired from Prince George's County.
Prince George's County. I'm sorry. That's correct. I apologize for that, Mark. So you've been in the field 27 years. You've recently retired. You're now doing FEMA training, and we just talked about this before the show started. All over the country. You're a busy guy. You're doing remotes. You're doing in class. How are you doing all that?
Well, I'll tell you, I absolutely love it. I'm in my 45th year now of the fire and EMS service. I first joined as a volunteer firefighter and EMT at the Branchville Volunteer Fire Company in College Park, Maryland, which is in Prince George's County. I was hired by Prince George's County Fire 40 years. I spent 40 years there. The last 27 I spent as the public information officer and chief spokesman. So I loved every minute of everything I did in Prince George's County, whether it be the 911 dispatch, firefighting, riding the ambulance, and of course, PIO. I just absolutely fell in love with that position and, doing the best we can for the citizens of Prince George's County.
Were you volunteer or voluntold when you got into the PIO business?
Oh, no, I actually, I had spent about 13 years in public safety communications working on our 911 dispatch center. And while I loved that job, it was time to move up and on. And the opportunity arose for me to take that test. They were hiring from within. And that's one thing that Prince George's County always did up until the time I left, is they hired their public information officers from within. There was only 3 or 4 public information officers before me in that full-time role. So I was very fortunate to have been hired into that position. And again, I just can't talk about how good that position was.
Since you've been in the position so many years, and you have been in the field for, like you said, 47, correct?
Yeah.
What changes have you seen that have positively impacted the PIO?
Well, when I first went to PIO, up in the office, we had a single page fax machine, single destination, where we would sit on that for hours at a time, dialing the numbers. It wasn't pre-programmed. We had to sit there and dial. So to send out a press release, it took us a couple hours. And then when they invented the multi-broadcast fax machine, we thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, we could put our press release in, hit a button, and we were done. And we knew at that point it couldn't get any better. We had the pagers on our belt. We'd have to pull off the side of the road and use a payphone or stop by a firehouse and call the communications to find out what was going on. So technology, I think, has made the biggest advance in the position of the PIO. Technology has improved so much and continues to improve, which allows PIOs to do their job better.
I agree. The technology that we have now compared to what it used to be like, just thinking about from the law enforcement perspective with the old hot sheets that we used to have for stolen autos. And now you can run a license plate anywhere in the country and you're going to be able to get information on the car, the registered owner, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Without a doubt.
So let's talk social media. You were quoted as saying once, social media is the biggest game changer for the public information professional. Can you expound on that?
Absolutely. And for a lot of the reasons we had just talked about, technology has made that advancement, and the social media making its way into our life as public information officers. I followed Los Angeles City fire department, they were kind of like my mentor. And I think it's okay for people to say, hey, I followed somebody else to get a lot of ideas. So I followed LA City, and I saw this thing, Twitter, pop up on social media. So I signed up. I believe I was in 2008 when I first signed up. Wasn't sure what it did, but soon found out. And I think, when you look at an ICS chart and PIO being part of that command staff for the incident commander, along with the liaison and safety officer, there's no box that has changed more in the last 12 to 15 years than that of the public information officer. Technology and social media is the reasons for that.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. What social media platform do you think is the most important for a PIO to capitalize on? There are a lot out there, and everybody always wants to add a new one on, but what do you think is the best one to use?
Well, I've always stuck to, while I've added some, but Twitter for public information officer, at least in this region, Twitter is the most important social media platform. For whatever reason, back when they invented Twitter and social media, that is where the media decided to reside. That's where reporters, assignment editors, you name it, if they're media related, they're on Twitter. And I think that's because we're able to share pictures and a link that will take them to a press release, videos, you name it, we can share it on Twitter. It's also important, I think, to reach the masses, to reach our community. A platform like Facebook can reach larger numbers of people within our community. But by far, Twitter is the most important, I believe, for a public information officer to be a part of and start getting that message out.
In particular, the speed that it moves too, correct? I mean, you can get information out very rapidly, and it can be shared on multiple platforms right from Twitter.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, again, the technology has made that available. It used to be in the early days of PIO, we would have a 2-3 alarm fire, and I'd be in the office, and I would never leave the office because I'd be sitting there answering the telephone, the hardwired telephone, and continue to answer, giving updates, listening to the radio, getting the updates. And I would never get to the actual scene until after my shift was over. So we have a fire now. I would simply put out a tweet, second alarm fire working in the 1800 block of Emmetsburg Road in Adelphi, PIO on the way. I would arrive within about 15, 20 minutes, having not received one phone call whatsoever. Media were there. Media was on the way there. I would quickly get there, shoot them a quick video of what was going on at the time, which helped the assignment editor say, man, look what Mark's seeing. We're going there. Or they say, hey, there's not so much excitement going on there anymore. We're going to turn around and go the other way where there's another breaking story. And while I missed media coming out to my scene, I understand where they're at, and I'm trying to help them out by doing their job. And Twitter allowed us to do that.
So let's talk about the social media emergency management guidance tool. I don't think many of our listeners are familiar with it. So I thought, here's a great person to talk about it, you.
Yeah, actually, I was one of the ones to beta test that tool. And basically what it is, developed by the Department of Homeland Security and Science Technology, along with FEMA. And it allows emergency managers and public information officers to front end a lot of information into this system. A lot of standard operating procedures, phone numbers of key personnel. So when the crisis occurs, you don't need to go searching for all of that information. It's right there. One of the biggest advantages of that is it allows you to download some templates that are in there with basic information. All you need to do is plug in the right information, and boom, it's sending it out. It knows which social media platforms you're on because you tell it, and it can automatically get that word out there. So I think it's still a work in progress. I think it can be used and can be used effectively if you do all the steps prior to using it. So there's a lot of work on the front end, putting information into this tool. But once you have it set and get used to using it, it's a very effective tool.
And where can our listeners maybe look at it and get an idea of what it's about?
Just simply Google or whatever search engine you have the tool, and it'll come up. It's a FEMA product, so the website can be trusted. And again, take a look at that, download that material, take a look at what you need to do. And again, you might find it very useful.
Excellent. It's always nice to have things that are pre set up for you. And I think that's what a lot of PIOs try to do. They're trying to get templates and stuff, but if it's all remote and you've already got it and you do the front end work and you're on the scene, you don't have to struggle to find that info.
That's right. That's right. It's right there for you. It's just important to make sure you plug in the correct information when you do it before sending it out.
I agree. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears here and talk about your experience as a trainer for FEMA. And as an instructor at the National Emergency Training Center in Emmetsburg. What type of PIO training are you doing? What are you handling right now?
My goal when I first started with FEMA and the Emergency Management Institute up in Emmetsburg, Maryland, was if it had PIO in it, I wanted to be able to teach it. And I think I've accomplished that task. My first class I started teaching up there was the All Hazards Incident Management Team, position specific, and that was PIO. I also learned the liaison, being as they're so closely related. I then went into the basic and GIS and JIC, and I'll get back to those in a second. The advanced PIO, and I'm also now authorized to teach the Master PIO up at EMI and across the country. Last year, we took the G290, which is basic PIO, and G291, which is the Joint Information System, Joint Information Center classes, which are taught at the state level, and we combine them into the 105 class, which is now called Public Information Basics. So we combine the PIO Basic, GIS-JIC, and Emergency Management Public Alert and Warning. Very similar classes, though we combine them into a 3-day class. Very successful class. It's probably one of the most requested classes at EMI. It's taught through the National Emergency Management Basic Academy and also on the PIO side. It's so effective that at some point this year, maybe at the end of 2022, FEMA is planning to stop supporting the 290 and 291, the basic and the GIS-JIC class, and only use the 105 as a prerequisite to get into advanced PIO, Master PIO, and what have you. So states can continue to teach it. It's just that FEMA won't be supporting it. Those are all great classes, all PIO classes, very effective. And we're getting back on track. We're getting a lot of students into the classroom or virtually. We just taught a virtual advanced PIO last week, a 1-week course, 40 hours, and we were limited to the amount of screen time the students were subjected to. So it was a unique experience for both the instructors and the students, but they ended up leaving satisfied that they learned a lot. They still experienced that busy JIC, and so we think it was a success.
Excellent. That's tough to go through training remotely, 40 hours. That's a lot of training, and then to have to do it virtually at the same time. I mean, kudos to you guys for putting it off.
Oh yeah, I mean, you leave that instruction and you are you're exhausted, not physically, mentally. You're exhausted. You need to go take a break after each day. So, but it proved to be very effective, and we were able to interact with the students where there was concern that virtually you can't do that, but we did. I think we pulled it off, and I think Nicole Schutz, the program manager at EMI for the PIO programs, she did an excellent job in transforming that to an in-person class, to a virtual class, and still keep that interactivity.
That's great. It's interesting where I've done a lot of training. I've conducted a lot of training classes. And like you said, the burnout for the instructor, the stress on the instructor to have to deliver material and deliver it consistently can be very tough, especially when you span it out over a 40-hour period. And I'm glad you brought up that you got to rest in between, because it's tough on the instructors too. People don't realize that even though, hey, we might know the material, but we have to present it to you in a coherent and a consistent way, and that's stressful.
It really is. And each group of students you have, there's all individuals, and each one has their own personality, and each has their own way of learning, and you need to sometimes adapt to that. and maybe present what you've presented before in a different manner to make sure they understand it.
It's interesting you bring up the different learners. When in the virtual training scenario, those kinetic learners, that's a tough way to learn when you have to stare at a screen all the time.
Exactly is. And that's why we always include a lot of activities with the training, whether it be in person or virtually. And a lot of the platforms like the Zoom or Adobe Connect, whatever you might be using, I think has made that available to us to send them off to a break room and connect in that break room as they would in the classroom. So again, technology has made that possible.
Great. I'm glad to hear that that's working out for you guys. So where do you see the PIO training going in the next 10 years?
I think it will continue. We've just got the advanced PIO revision complete, and we're going to do a pilot class in Kentucky at the end of March. So we're looking forward to that, and it's going to have to go through constant revisions, as well as the Master PIO and that basic PIO class as well, because you've seen how much the position has changed, the person himself has changed. So we need to keep up with that. We need to make sure our activities and everything are relevant to the students to keep it active. I think you'll see at EMI some expanded training, some new PIO classes being added to the 105 and 388. Somewhere in between there, we're going to add some additional classes, and I think really enhance the profession of being a public information officer by adding these new classes. And also, I think on the horizon is some credentialing. Not your standard type 1, type 2, type 3, as in the all hazards, but credentialed as a PIO. And whether there's Master PIO in front of it or advanced PIO, that remains to be seen. But I think you will see PIOs obtaining some professional credentialing.
I know that the NIOA has been looking at credentialing programs or some way to credential. So, and I agree, it needs to be done. It helps standardize our field as best as it can, but it also adds that level of they're a professional, so they should have that credentialing.
Right, and NIOA they introduced it to an organization that does professional credentialing, and they have the ball now, and they're starting to run with it. So it won't be long before we see that showing up and asking people to work with that. FEMA, again, Nicole Schutz is working with this group to determine what education is needed, and the classes that are going to be set up will be right in line with that credentialing. So if you take these classes, by the time you're done, you will be able to be credentialed.
That's great, and that's what our field needs. I agree, 100%. So, Mark, what challenges are you seeing that are facing PIOs in getting information out of the media?
Repeat that one again.
What challenges are facing PIOs in getting information out to the media?
I think that obviously we can get information to them. That's relatively easy part. I think what happens is that PIOs need to have a seat at the table with the fire chief, I think, or whoever your boss may be. PIOs need to be part of that decision-making process, and they need to have the authority of their boss to say, hey, boss, when this happens, I need to notify the community this is going on, and to have that authority to do that and to tell your own story. Make sure someone else, whether it be a citizen with a camera or another agency, tell your story. If you have ownership of a story, I want that PIO of that agency to tell that story. You own it. You need to tell a story, and you need to tell it pretty quickly nowadays. Waiting hours to tell a story doesn't work in today's world. You need to get the information out pretty fast.
And this goes to my next question is, as a trainer, what do you see as lacking from PIOs that are coming into the field today?
One thing I've noticed about PIOs, new public information officers, there's so many different titles out there. Digital content editor, social media editor, whatever. We're all public information officers. Basically, we're getting information out to the public that they have a right to know and that we want them to know. So I think that's one challenge. I'd like to see a PIO, and I can only base this on my career, coming up through the system. I had a background in firefighting and emergency medical services, 11 years in the dispatch center, and I knew the county pretty well. I knew my community. I knew my demographics. So when I got up into PIO, I hit the ground running. And I think I have all that base knowledge about my community helped me do my job better. So people bouncing around from job to job as PIOs, they don't like one place, they go to another. I can't see them being very effective. I think that, again, it's ideal to be able to come up. Not everybody can do that, but take the training and get to know your community.
Great way to sum it up. You have always talked about relationship building as a PIO, and you just kind of hinted at it there. But why is it so important for the success of the PIO?
Well, I think when the crisis hits is not the first time you should be talking to the assignment editor or to a reporter. Building relationships both internally with your boss and your command staff, members of your department, to build that trust up that you're not going to throw them under the bus. And our external customers, whether it be the community or the media, I would constantly go down to our media outlets in the Washington, D.C. Media market. That's our media market in Prince George's County, and spend some time in their stations, whether it be the TV stations, radio stations, go out to lunch or have a cup of coffee with reporters from the newspapers, Washington Post, the Examiner, and building that relationship. Make sure they had my contact information, made sure they knew how to contact me. Like after 10 o'clock, I'm off limits. Send me a text. If I'm up, I'll answer you. And exchange of phone numbers, media handles, social media handles, all that information. So I was prepared when an incident went south. I knew how to contact people. I was familiar with people, and they were familiar with me as well.
I think that's a great way that we've just summed up everything. It's having those connections and that relationship, and you actually have to seek it out. They're not going to come to you, and you're not going to be able to have that fair connection. Even if they do seek you out, they're not going to necessarily be reasonable with you if you say, hey, listen, hold this just a little bit. If you've had that connection with them, they might hold something a little bit if you ask them to. They may not, but that connection is what's going to matter.
It's important to be credible and that trusted source of information where they know, hey, that's not exactly the right story, but I can't tell you the right story yet, but that's what you're chasing is not the right story. And they have that trust in you. Okay, Mark, I'll wait to hear from you before I go any further. That's huge to have that type of relationship.
I agree. All right, we're going to pivot here. We're going to go to a little lighter questions here,
all right,
Mark. All right, so favorite sports team?
Football, Washington football team. Hopefully they have a name over the next couple of days, and I'll be able to tell you what that is. But Washington football team, football is my answer to that.
All right, I love it. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate if it's by itself, vanilla if I have something to put on top of it, like chocolate cream or caramel or something like that.
I like that. What is a must-read book in your mind?
Well, Report from Engine Company 82. Way back in 1972, that book was written by the recently deceased Dennis Smith. I've recently pulled that book out. I'm going to read it again. For social media, Now Is Too Late by Gerald Barron. Great book that describes, the speed of social media and the need to get it out quickly.
What book was that again for social media?
Now Is Too Late. Written back in 2003, before all of this came out. So Gerald Barron had that vision to write this book about getting information out, getting it out quickly from a public safety aspect as well as a corporate aspect.
I'll look at that. I haven't seen that one yet. Excellent. If you could have coffee with a historic figure, who would you choose and why?
I think the person that interests me the most is President John Kennedy. I just relate to him on many different levels, and I would love to be able to talk to him not only about his personal life, which is very interesting, as well as some of the decisions he made pretty bravely as president. although it was only a short period of time, he impressed me quite a bit.
Favorite drink of choice?
Coffee with cream.
What would be your superpower if you could get one?
I think the ability to fly. I think that would be neat, to be able to fly wherever you want by yourself. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I love, a lot of people love that one. They really do. They love the ability to fly. All right, Mark, anything you'd like to add?
You know, the PIO's motto, getting the right information to the right people at exactly the right time so they can make the right and informed decision. Every PIO class we teach, we push that message, and really it encompasses what we do as PIOs, to get that right information, the right people at the right time so they can make the right decisions. So I try to live by that. I did as a public information officer, and I do as an instructor for PIOs now. So, you know, I can't say much more than that. That's a great motto to have as a PIO.
I like that. I wrote it down. I'm going to make sure I put that when we promote the show. I like that.
Fantastic.
So how can people best reach out to you if they want to learn more or connect?
You know, I talk to a lot of my former students all the time. They call me or text me with the question, and I can always relate to them. This is how I would handle something. So I'm available pretty much all the time. I'm on Twitter at PIO Mark Brady. I can be called on the phone. I don't mind answering the phone. It's 443-775-0157, and email at PIO-markbrady@gmail.com.
All right. I'll make sure I put all that in the show notes. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so happy I was able to get you on. You know, you were suggested by several people over the last year, and I wanted to get to you. It just timing didn't work out, and I'm so glad we were able to work this out and get you on the show.
Exactly. Enjoyed doing it and enjoyed spreading the word about PIOs. And thank you for what you do as well, Bob.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, and I look forward to having you on at another time.
Okay, fantastic. Anytime.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at the PIOpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.